Sounds good. Hello and welcome to the Making It Easy to Be Human podcast. I'm Dr. Manijeh Motaghy, founder of Perfectly Here and author of It's Not Easy to Be Human. I'm an organizational psychologist, UCLA mindful instructor, and the creator of mindful life optimization methodology. This is optimization in three domains of systemic, planetary, and human experience, conduct, and happiness. In this podcast series, you will learn how we apply MLO concepts, qualities, and skills to create successful and fulfilling lives. MLO has been incorporated into corporate processes, executive and team development, as well as into educational, sustainability, and technological themes. Through these episodes, we explore the systemic, environmental, and developmental challenges that control our lives and determine the future of humanity. We share practical insights and tools to help make being a human easier and more effective. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Mary Aroyan, licensed psychotherapist, and Matthew Law, university lecturer, mindfulness practitioner and advocate, board member and advisor. So today what we've been doing is covering the chapters of the It's Not Easy to Be Human book, because it's a comprehensive book about that has 60 lessons in it and a few methodologies. And today we're going to kind of recap what we talked about in the last episode, which we brought up chapter, let me share my screen. It was chapter 2, which I'm just going to look at the table of contents. And in chapter 2, we kind of explored, first of all, before we get into optimization, before we get into lessons, before we get into how we're going to do better and become better, it's a good idea to see how we get stuck in life. And being stuck in life, in a reactionary life, means not being satisfied, not having effective tools, effective ways of living life, and constantly coming across problems, relationship problems, environmental problems, systemic problems, policy problems, all kinds of problems that because we were developed in a way that was not so fruitful. We want to look at some of the factors, perhaps, some of the common causes. So chapter 2 talks about common causes that make a person be stuck in life. Stuck meaning, again, just going round and around in cycles of unhappiness and failure. So some of the things that I've included are, of course, traumatic experiences we have during childhood or during our life, and it keeps going on. It's not just in the past, but they keep occurring in our lives. Those impact our lives, and then to feel stuck. And then sometimes some of these traumas are caused by inaccurate perception at the time or interpretation of what happened. Some of these traumas are not necessarily as traumatic, could have been not traumatic if a person had the skills, had the awareness, had the presence, and had the capability for accurate analysis of what's going on. They might not have been traumatized. So that's a really important one to look at. And then there are inherent biases. Our brain comes with many biases, but the ones I picked were two main ones that I think they're the mother and father of these biases. Any other bias comes out of this, and maybe we'll talk about what the bias is at the core. Inherently, We tend to believe what we think or some other people tell us. We are not wired for fact-checking. Our brain is not a fact-checking machine unless you have been educated, trained as a scientist or as a investigator of some sort to do so. Usually humans of any background, it doesn't matter what belief system or cultural system you have, we tend to believe, we opt to believe, and it's because of efficiency. The brain uses less energy, less resources when it can just rely on something to be fact. If this is the fact, yes, the brain takes it and makes choices for us, makes decisions for us, and manages our life like that. So, and then there's the fact of autopilot. In order for us to not make so many mistakes and do life more successfully, and again, the brain's role or goal is to keep us alive, to survival related, keep us alive, and so it has a mechanism of putting us on automatic pilot, meaning you don't have to worry about it. You create a system, whether it's a thinking approach, whether it's a it's a thing that you, habitual ways of living that you do, and the brain just will do it for you. You don't have to pay attention to it. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about why we get stuck is mind viruses, which is all kinds of includes disturbing thoughts, negative thoughts, misperceptions, thinking, having racist ideas or prejudice ideas or miscalculating things that makes you unhappy, victim mentality, blaming, resisting, rationalizing, or some other things, envy, jealousy. Some others could be, the sense of self depends on success or money or fame or name. These things become, as a virus, it means there is a code that comes into the mind and we spread it. It's contagious. We can spread it to others. We suffer, and viruses, when they attack you, they really are not for the good of the human. It's not going to make you feel well. It will make you feel ill. It will make you feel anxious, stressed out, mind viruses. So there are hundreds of examples of that, but the idea is that it can originate within oneself, become a religion, become a belief system, become something that is really not productive, it could be disturbing, destructive for oneself and the society. So that was just a little bit of overview of chapter 2, and then the three of us will talk about these things, and perhaps examples come, we'll talk about them. And then I'll just quickly, before we get into discussion, chapter 3 then tells us how does a person develop this template, because when we are born, we do not come with a how to be a human template. We have to learn them. So stage 1, we capture information, data, and things come at us through our senses as from infanthood. And then stage 2 is these things start to have meaning, label. We learn, oh, this is a book, this is water, this is mother, this is this is how to walk. We learn, and there are learning and meaning. And then during stage 2, what we learn, which is a continual thing, even into adulthood, a lot of things we learn could be faulty, could be missing information, it could be incomplete, which a person then has to go and fill in the blank, you know, bring their own assumption into it. And then stage three, as we kind of begin to learn and practice or repeat these things, we adopt them, we adapt them, they become our habits, habitual way of thinking, doing, and acting, and feeling even. Even feelings could become habitual. Stage four, if no one, if we don't develop and grow and no one challenges any of the mind viruses, let's say, or biases or false interpretations, if we don't get a chance to correct them, by stage four, they are embedded into our personality. They become our default disposition and personality. And then stage five is when we are again not open to changing or recognizing or healing or doing the work that is useful to grow, develop, and rewire, recode the faulty stuff. Then we're stuck. We get engulfed and we're stuck. And then at the end of the book, there is a little questionnaire. How do I know I'm stuck? You can go there and and take answer those questions and see how stuck are you. That would be of interest. So I'm going to stop sharing and see what my colleagues shows up for them, what they would like to talk about.
Hello, everyone. I can start. It's always so disheartening to either feel that stuck feeling, right, or to see or other people going through it, especially when you're trying to help them navigate through that difficult process. But I love how you've hit the traumatic experience is one of the key things I think that allows people just to like ruminate in a lot of negativity and experience it physically, emotionally. Um, and so much is based in those biases that have been created prior to even the traumatic event, and sometimes even minimize a trauma that you may be going through, right? Because depending on the bias you believe regarding what is actually happening to you, So, um, and it's very easy to fall into those biases, especially if you're lacking the accurate facts and the inability to have an accurate analysis of what's happening based on what you've been taught, what you've been told, religion, culture, family, anything and everything can help create a narrative or a belief system. So recognizing where that's happening and also recognizing not to internalize it, right? To make it about themselves. I think some of the biases also are rooted in beliefs about like that self-preservation is also a selfish thing to do, right? And a lot of that could be a gender thing, right? Where so you might even feel like you have to internalize other people's problems or the responsibility to help them fix it and whatever else, depending again on culture, gender, right? How many mothers are out there that feel guilty for trying to indulge in anything for themselves because of fear of being judged, perhaps, right? For not prioritizing their children, or, the analogy on the plane when cabin pressure is low, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself, right? But a lot of people struggle with the idea of that, especially if they have their children or their loved ones or their partners, because we're programmed to believe that, that might be a selfish thing to do versus the facts of why that is important in order to be your better self.
I like that. I like that.
Thank you.
So you are those good examples of stage four, where this becomes a disposition or a personality or identity, even. Like,
Hmm.
and one doesn't want to even give up the identity. If I am constantly caring for other people or pleasing them, then I must be a good person. I'm a good mother, and I can't even evaluate how harmful this is for me or not. That's the idea of being stuck. That one is not aware and is not able to let go and get out.
Yeah, they might not even think it's a problem, right? Or that it's something that is keeping them stuck.
Right, right. What comes through for you, Matthew?
There's a lot of different things that are coming through this. First and foremost, I think we need to recognize that the that real trauma, serious trauma, does occur.
Mm.
People go through very bad experiences in life: violent crime, wars, sudden loss of health or family and friends, extreme weather events, and the results of trauma is the body's response, the nervous system, to be in a fight, flight response, um, fight, flight or freeze or fawn response. And in many ways, a lot of these being stuck is getting your nervous system to be in that state again. And this is why what leads people to addiction, what leads people to be workaholics, to do all sorts of activities that keep their nervous system in that state, even though it's counterintuitive. They don't want to be there, but the body gets used to it. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is how there really is examples in life where trauma does happen, and we need to accept that, recognize it, help people. But I also think a really good thing in the book is about how this false interpretation can cause trauma. Um, we we all know examples of we in false interpretation. I think what comes to mind for me is things where you're not really is a cause to be seriously concerned, although the body is concerned. The body goes into this fight, flight, or freeze. Some good examples: fear of flying, turbulence. You didn't actually have any accident. Plane didn't crash, but being having experiencing turbulence can put your body into that state, be stuck. Another really good one of mine is seeing a letter from the government. Is
Mm.
this some sort of audit, or am I going to be investigated? What's this about, extra fees? So your body goes into this false interpretation and you don't even want to open the mail, right? Um, Going to see relatives certain times a year can also be a false interpretation, because you're so worried about maybe people could be aggressive or not good. And so they're not inherently dangerous, like real trauma is. Real trauma is dangerous. It is danger. It is life-threatening. It is causing harm. But I think what comes to mind is also recognizing that the false interpretation of trauma through some of these seemingly common aspects of life can also cause trauma too, because your nervous system is stuck.
Right, right, right. That's great. Yeah. So these, so when, for example, when people come to you, Mary, for your, clients or so, and are you able to see there what is a person, because there are different topics in life, there are different layers of our themes of our lives, and work could be a different environment, family could be a different environment, friendship could be a different environment,
Mhm.
um, and the place that we go for entertainment is a different environment. And so these stages, they probably show up. A person could be less or more adaptive, or less or more flexible to change, less or more, like they may let go of something their child did, but never let go of something the husband did, or something like that. So how do you see these differences in these different stages of that people are that they have these biases, the biases. I think we could talk about the bias a little bit more, because um, it's really, for me, it's really about what the brain has opted to believe.
Mhm.
Boy, it doesn't matter what it is, anything and everything, even our personal values, even our personal, um, anything we think is the core, even that core could be a bias. Like we picked it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you even find that some people, regardless of whatever the statistics are, when, like, let's say they've had more success with something, let's say they're an artist. I'll give you an example. One of them is an artist. And if she gets great feedback from 95% of the people who have commented, right? And then that 5% has given some kind of negative comment or whatever, people are so much more prone to focus on, even though it's that 5% and then 95 is already stacked and speaking against this 5%, right? But we're so, I feel like, prone to just inherently being more negative biased, that it's like it's easy to grasp onto that. And having people see like the difference, right? If it was anything else, the weight of it on a scale is going to be significantly different, right? And if you just tried to be objective about it and saw it, you could see. But when you're in it and you're experiencing it, and then the feedback loop from your, starting from your childhood, right, where you've been criticized, where maybe you've been minimized, all these insecurities that you have, and depending on how much love and nurturance you've also had along the way, right, that can make this process somewhat easier because you've had exposure to positive experiences, to more love, to more understanding, compassion. And all of this plays a role. And it's so hard to kind of generalize something like this because everyone comes from that different walk of life, right? Different experience, different background. Even if it is the same background and culture, still, right? Like you don't even have the same parents being siblings in the same household, right? Like with the same set of parents, much less like all these different families, even if it is in the same cultural context. But it's back to these biases. Yeah, it's what, again, we've been taught to believe or constantly confirm over and over again, so that 95% that loves her art, but that 5% that's lacking, that's going to feed into everything from her perfectionism, right, that she's struggling with, to there's so many little nuances and so many branches that just like feeds into that. I think people struggle in discerning what's what and what the actual core of it comes down to. And it's like teasing that out, right? Talking it through, coming up with examples, or exploring that, how that victim loop shows up over and over again, and what's more of the common patterns and shortcomings that pretty much come up.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, as you guys were talking, even as Matthew was talking, I'm going to be honest, that traumatic experience, I mean, just surviving the fire last year, right? And having a mindful practice of my own, reading the chapters, going through like how you've expressed rage, how it shows up, intermittent, emotions that just show up. And this is me having a practice, and I can get stuck and lost and spiral into some of these things, right? So especially, and I, my heart goes out to the people who may have no practice whatsoever in place and are just like this hamster on a wheel, and how do you maintain hope, connection, just any kind of positivity or and motivation, so it's really hard. And I think uh the more people try to explore that, as difficult as it is, otherwise it's just going to stay there
Right, right.
and then becomes part of your personality, right?
Yeah. So I also want to go back and touch on the word practice that you mentioned. For our
Hmm.
listeners, people who, what are you guys practicing? What are you practicing? Let us know. So, you're talking about self-awareness, self-analysis, being in touch with, and it's not something that either you do or you don't, but you practice doing it and even reflecting on it and recognizing nothing is happening right now, but for the past half an hour I was lost in these traumatic thoughts and ruminating thoughts, and I wasn't even aware of it. To get out, how do you get out? And then Matthew, you were talking to me before the session about how groups of people or we are sort of programmed to do life in a certain way, to do business, to do professional life in a certain way, not be able to listen, but to just want to sell yourself and talk about yourself. This lack of awareness, this being habitual. Can you put that example into some of these stages or these? Let me go back and share.
Yeah, yes, for sure. I mean, when it comes to bias in particular, I think that there is again the the human condition wants to protect us from having trauma or being in danger. But sometimes, as we well know, some of these, particularly stage three adaptation and habit, can be systemic or even multi-generational. Um, and we need to be able to recognize that and to be able to talk about it. But also, I think one of the biggest things when it comes to bias is also to have a discernment about a particular situation. Mary talked about discerning as well. Sometimes, if we're in a subway late at night in New York City or in Europe, we may be legitimately worried about certain individuals, but how much of our discernment is based on actually really physical conditions where people may be out to take advantage of us, or is it our biases about how people look or dressed that make us fearful when in fact maybe those people, despite our biases, really are harmless, and maybe they could even be somebody that would help us. So I think there's a lot to be said in the stages about when it comes to being stuck, how we need to be able to either discern what is the real situation and not be taken up by our biases as well, and be scared by that. And I'll go back to what Mary was talking about with the fire situation. Um, you may have a bias not to um, ever want to live in a place which has a high fire risk, but then you may have some discernment around being able to choose a place that's actually um, quite quite okay to have a house and not be too worried about fires. So I think this is where the stages two can help us get through some of these things as well. But we always need to sort of double back and consider where our human software is at this particular point in time. So I think that there's a lot to be said about what are the reasons why we're stuck, and then what are we doing in terms of, are those things that why we're stuck there to really help us, or are they something that we need to move beyond and just focus on the facts and some discernment that's going to actually help us be protected?
Yeah, I like that.
Can
So,
I piggyback off of that?
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Mhm.
With the biases, like let's say the subway late at night, right? I mean, there's bias as well as wisdom coming in, I think, in that kind of situation, right? Because it's the accurate analysis of that situation is saying at that hour there are probably less people around, so things can go wrong more with, like, or just population wise, but also there are biases that come into that. But I think that's kind of a different balance of just what we know and what we're trying to prevent too. So wisdom does kind of come into that. But as far as the uh buying a house, right? Like let's say, or getting another house or a living situation in a fire. And this is also to answer your question, Manijeh, about our practice is it was very difficult after the fire to be very cognizant of attachment to things, right? Because if I allowed myself, and if by having a practice is recognizing, man, it's so difficult to sum up years of work now in a way that says like just this constant self-evaluating, right? The awareness, gaining insight, trying to work through the patterns I've had with myself, the negative thoughts, the biases I've grown up with, right? Or still have the traumas and experiences I've gone through, and what we've learned or confirmed along the way, and having to basically re-question and reevaluate, and even having to relearn approach, thought, belief, right? With that I had to literally, as I'm staring at the burnt piece of wood that was this significant tree that had so much meaning when I planted it, I had to literally stop myself. And I know we've talked about taking pauses before, and that pause at that moment was just to kind of bring myself back from that getting lost and spiraling into everything that I planted, the intention, the belief, and the love that I planted into that tree is now gone because it is burned down. It adds so much more suffering to my situation. And by recognizing in that, taking that pause, as difficult, I don't even know how I did it, honestly, at that moment. And it's those moments where you realize, oh my God, I am growing more than I thought, or I have more growth. And sometimes you don't know until you're in a situation where it shows itself that, and you're proud, you know? And so in that pause, I had to remind myself that yes, that is the physical depiction of that intention, that love, that grief, that all the intentions I had in planting that tree, but that came from me, you know? And so by reminding myself of that, I didn't add more suffering. And are there moments where I do get lost in that and I do feel like, yeah, maybe I did lose that attach or have get stuck in that attachment? Sure. But they're fewer and far between. And by if I did that more often, I think oh my God, it's already difficult. I can't imagine how much worse it could have been, or it would be.
I love it. You're talking about stage two. Look at that. Meaning and learning what this thing means to us.
It's possible.
Yeah, loving the tree, and it's me and mine, and it's on my property. You know, one of the lessons that, as you know, I talk about is the falsehood of ownership, that we believe whatever, just because we have a document, we agreed among ourselves, the humans, you know, okay, this is mine, this house is mine, this boundary, this country, this region, or whatever is mine, we believe it. We get stuck into then thinking it's solid. It's not changing. It's not supposed to change. It's not supposed to be otherwise. But nature of things is that everything can be otherwise, right? So unfortunately, in the stuck model, the 5 stages of stuck model, there is a lot of wisdom that a person has missed growing up. And not, and I call those wisdom life intelligence, like intelligence that life, the way the life works, the way things work, there's a lot of that that's missing. Like even last night I was watching a remake of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the guy that was so fun. We loved, everybody loved him. This movie, and Tom Hanks is the actor acting on his behalf, and he was so many scenes. He talks to say, he said, we have to tell children there is death, so they know what to do with the grief or the shock or the. We have to tell children there is sickness. We have to tell children how feelings are okay to express them or what to do with them. And it was so beautiful. So those educational pieces, not everybody has them growing up, and not enough of it maybe. Like maybe you're watching the show on television, you learn something, but your parents are not practicing them or exhibiting them. Your culture doesn't exhibit them, and it doesn't get embedded in your system, in your wiring system, in your template. So, and then we just so the opposite of that, when we get to the 5 stages of optimization, is then we get to realize, oh, what are the lessons that are missing? What are the lessons that were false? How do we rewire? How do we change? And why should we even do it? You know, why should I forgive? For example, we did the retreat a couple of weeks ago. During the retreat, the title was Letting Go of Resentment and Forgiveness Retreat, a day practice. Throughout the whole day, I never talked about letting go. It never came up. But all these other understandings of life and the benefits of, distancing pain from yourself and being willing to be free of pain and suffering. And why should you? And what's the benefit and how to do it? And never came up that let go and forgive, you know? So the stage 2, meaning and learning, on the other side, stage 2 of optimization is to self-verification. Check this out. Is this accurate? What you're thinking? How you're feeling? Is it necessary to feel this way? For example, you're driving down the road, minding your own business. All of a sudden, a thought comes up to you that makes you feel rejected. A memory, a dialogue, something with somebody, relationship concept comes up, and you feel like you're rejected. All of a sudden, you may be starting to cry and be sad. And okay, the awareness comes and says, is it necessary for me to be upset right now? Is this actually going on right this moment? You know? Not being habitually acting, but then it needs, like you say, practice. So what else shows up for you too? Matthew, what else shows up?
What's really coming up for me is how this concept, and it really ties into the 5 stages too. Two people can see exactly the same event and have different feelings, different responses, different nervous system reactions. So, like something as simple as maybe there's a crowd that see an eagle come down and take a small dog or a cat and carry it off, and everyone's seen the same thing, but one person can't sleep and is completely worried about the whole situation, and another person doesn't even think twice about it and moves on with life. So I think we also need to think about, when we're looking at the 5 stages, how things like the disposition, different meanings, histories can also influence how people get stuck. And really, we also need to hold space that we shouldn't be saying that because someone can't sleep, they're overreacting or they need to grow up, or because someone doesn't react, then there's something wrong with them from a empathy point of view. It's just the fact of understanding that we all, from our own past experiences, our our nature, our nurture, that we respond to things in different ways, and our nervous systems react differently as well.
Right, and allowing for it, allowing for differences of experience and expression and being. And this thing about reminds me what you're saying about people usually feeling comfortable with like-minded people. They like-minded people. When they come into our groups, or I like to be here because of like-minded people, and this discomfort with people who don't see things the way we do. It's all reasonable, it's not a person's lack or deficiency, but it's because the brain likes to make us, don't make mistakes. If you are with like-minded people, you will remain on autopilot. You'll do things the way you're supposed to do, just copy, 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 think the same way, respond the same way. They agree, you agree, everybody agrees, harmony, no conflict, you know. And then for us to go above it and beyond it and be willing to endure the disharmony of differences in opinion, it's not easy. So we opt to not do it. Again, it's really unconscious, very unconscious. So what we're asking people is to become conscious, you know. Another thing about the consciousness, I was in Bulgaria and having this conversation with someone who was leading the session, and he asked me about, so what do you think is going to happen with consciousness with all the AI and digitalization and all these, technology advancements and all that? What's going to happen to consciousness? And my first reaction was, there is no consciousness, meaning we're not conscious already, we're not. It's not like we are conscious, we're going to lose it. For the big, like you said, 90% positive, 10% negative, we're not conscious. It's on autopilot. Already we're not. It's not like we are going to lose what we have. No. So, making it concise about my explanation to him was, but we can develop our consciousness. We can continue developing our consciousness, the experience of something, not the explanation of it, but the experience of it, the knowing of what is happening. Sense consciousness can be developed, and we can actually, regardless of. And then if we did have all these things developed, some of these capabilities like attentiveness, like self-analysis, all these things, we would be less deceived, less exploited, less on autopilot and just scrolling on social media. So we can take a little more responsibility to make an effort to develop our attention and not keep blaming the AI and social media and all the ways that they nudge us to fall for being monetized, Yes, they want to monetize us, but if you are present, attentive, and know what is to your benefit, you have figured it out and you're able to stay calm and present and take care of it, you dismiss it, you turn it off, you do things that are actually useful and not just go on, because you're going to be on autopilot no matter what. We're going to be unconscious. We are wired to be unconscious. To expect us to be conscious beings without training I don't think it's reasonable.
I agree. I mean, you just talking about exposure to a concept like death, right? We are so prone to protecting people from bad news, right? The reality of things that aren't always pleasant and create suffering, whether it's death, whether it's failure, right? I mean, how many people are so afraid of failure that they won't even try doing something? Because what does that mean about you, right? What does the bias of failure, what does that represent to you? Who do you become? How do you feel about yourself? How are you seen? Like the shame, guilt, all these things that are tied to it. And if we were just more proactive about that knowledge, right? That power of that knowledge of knowing these are the things that exist in life, right? And yes, some things are great and some things are bad, and some things that can be both great and bad at the same time, right? So depending on the context and how it shows up. Fire analogy, great. We need it, right? It's mesmerizing. It's necessity. Then it can also ruin, right? Like everything. So, but it's recognizing that balance, right? That anything can be that way. I can be great to someone and someone else can totally hate me. I don't know, right? I can't control all of that intentionally. I mean, unintentionally. But like, but what I'm saying is, and so many people struggle with what they're experiencing because they may think they're alone because again, there's that shame, there's that insecurity about, does someone else understand, or am I the only one going through this? I've, in my experience, especially when I was working with addiction, um there were so many people who were going through serious mental illness, right? Like whether it was PTSD, whether it was bipolar, whatever it was, they had no idea what that label was, and they thought they were alone just by even knowing that they weren't alone. And this is the effect of what, to the cause. I think it was, you just saw how much of the burden that was lifted just because they felt seen, they felt understood. So now imagine if we were to see each person for what they are going through versus our biases dictate, or that lens of like filtering what it is or making our own assessments, but being with that person and trying to understand where they're coming from, because nobody has it all figured out and everyone's going through something at one point or another, so that being seen, that being present, that being that analysis, that accurate analysis of what these things are and that they exist in the world. And the sooner we understand and make peace with how to manage it, I think we're kind of getting rid of half of it on its own automatically.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. What else can we talk to add to this about the five stages of being stuck? This is how we become stuck, and
Well, I have some really good examples about how the being stuck can propagate and multiply. And I had a really good example this weekend where one of my neighbors, there's an apartment with three apartments in the house, and somebody in that apartment had a package delivered from Amazon to myself, and I'm happy to do that, no problems. In the morning, I went out in the street, and somebody from that apartment, and I know them, but I don't know who's where, and I I saw the person, and we were talking amongst a few of us on the street, and I said, "Hey, do you have a package at my place?" And the person went straight into autopilot, just went crazy, couldn't control themselves, and said to me, "Why would I know? No, I don't have, would never leave anything with you," and was very, very triggered, very, very biased. And then I'm thinking, okay, great. So now I have a bias against somebody else because of their bias against somebody else's bias. And so it was really a surreal situation. And I had to catch myself, and like, I wasn't going to get angry back at her because I was trying to do the right thing. I was trying to be nice neighbor. I have their package. I'm sorry, you're there. So and I think again goes back to what the whole MLO. I just smiled. I said, okay, no worries, move on. But we also, need to remember, this is crazy. It can be a very crazy situation where I did not know that obviously those two people living in the same building in different apartments have a problem with each other. Who knows why? Again, bias. One has a dog, one doesn't have a dog. Does the dog bark? We don't know what's really going on, but obviously they're not getting on very well. And then if another neighbor mistakes the other one, you can have all sorts of problems. So I think that we need to be also, recognize that some of these things, people getting stuck, two people stuck, three people stuck, can multiply, and then you have everybody in the neighborhood who doesn't like each other. So I think that's something else that's coming up for me, and important for us to understand. If things can escalate pretty badly for the wrong reasons. At the end of the day, neighbors want to get on well with each other. We want to live in harmony. We want to uh, help each other. We want to be able to get each other's packages and hand it over. And what's stopping us from doing that? And often it's just a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of the things that we're talking about in the 5 stages too.
Yeah, that's so true. And nationally and internationally and globally, how people go on and on for decades and centuries, just hating each other and not being able to get along. And so some of these things that we'll talk later more about are like in stage 2 of growing up and developing a human software, if you will. There is a lot that we need to learn and develop that could be missing, or the development gets interrupted. So one of the things that you both are talking about here is the development of the heart, this superior heart intelligence. So we may have heart intelligence circumstantially, be kind and nice to someone we like, to our family member, to our friend, but not to somebody else. Not be able to extend that same kindness and goodwill to somebody else. And not even know that it's so beneficial to do that. It's so beneficial to do that. And then not be aware that a person is being harsh at the moment, not being aware that they are insulting somebody. They're not even aware of it. It's like I have the example of one of my neighbors who one day came over to kind of complain about parking, that my people, whoever my people are, keep parking on this, and this is the street. It's not a parking lot or designated anything for anybody. Parking on the street too much, and in front of his house, and he has to keep coming and asking us to move people, and it's your people. When I came out and I said, but there's nobody here, nobody here in my house. There's nobody here. You're just assuming that it's mine. And I don't know why something rubbed him the wrong way. He said, well, people have to go learn their English. Now he, threw the dart back at it. People have to go learn their better English to when they're talking. So and then he also knows himself to be very spiritual. Before this, he was saying, I'm spiritual. I don't need to learn spirituality, because people who come to my house sometimes for retreats, we meditate and all that. He wanted to say, don't think you're somebody special. I already am very spiritual. And then when he said, so I'm listening, I'm just standing there thinking, oh, you're attacking me. There is nobody at my house right now. There are no cars here. Why are you attacking me? And then when he said, people have to go learn English, then I just, took a breath and I looked at him and I said to him, well, it's okay. You could insult me. It's fine. You could insult me. But is that spiritual? Is that part of your spirituality? And I cannot tell you, Matthew, this man, this really tall, big, stature compared to me, man, he just melted. His body melted. He all of a sudden became aware that he is harming me, he is attacking me, he is aggressive towards me. And that is absolutely against his own belief about himself and who he is, and how kind and compassionate he is, how spiritually enlightened he is, and here he was. And it was such a beautiful kind of a scene to see that I didn't, criticize him, I didn't judge him, I didn't attack him, nothing. I said, it's fine, you could insult me, but is that spiritual? And for 2 weeks afterwards, he kept bringing me fruit. he kept bringing me, because he would have farmers market stands that he would I don't know, I think his family had farm or something. He would bring fruit to, and he, Manijeh, I'm so sorry, Manijeh, I love you. I just wanted you to know that I am so grateful. You're kind, you're good. I said, it's okay, it's fine. But he was absolutely unaware how aggressive he was and how even fast he was about the cars being parked there. It wasn't even happening, you know? So these are the skills that you're talking about, Mary, that in such an experience, in such a situation, you show up automatically. That's the adaptation, disposition, and personality. These, fortunately, thankfully, these better ways of responding and better ways of being wise and compassionate and effective, they too become our new traits. They too become we go on autopilot, and the brain now has a new way of acting and behaving and being. And it was just an incredible modeling to him that, and it was not because I wasn't shaming him, screaming at him, shaming him. He became humbled and became so much kinder, you know. But if I had whatever, screamed at him or get out of my property, what are you talking about, this and that and the other, the conflict would never end. It would become so much more. And so here I think is a good time for me to say to our listeners or viewers that we three are board members of a nonprofit called Perfectly Here. We put some effort into preparing for each podcast session, and we don't have a budget for editing this post production, things that people do. So if you can help us by subscribing to this podcast, I would really appreciate it. And then sharing the podcast with others if it's helpful to them to think about, reflect on what's happening with them, what they may be able to do. And also, if you have any topics that you're interested for us to cover, we're all three of us are knowledgeable in some aspects. We may be able to provide better topics. Please reach out to us, write to us, and keep listening, because the way we are going through this podcast is through the way the book is laid out, first showing the causes and then get into higher level development of things, these traits and habits and skillfulness. And thank you so much, both of you, to giving us your time, your love, your well intentions, to just, for us humans, this is a short life, you know. We want to live it well and hopefully teach others how to do it as well. Any closing remarks, both of you?
I think the two neighbor examples just kind of makes it just so clear that when people are in their loops, right, with the biases, they're all just responding from that place. So no one is really tapping into their objective self, right? So if I'm feeling attacked, or my insecurity or my fear or whatever is being triggered at that moment, and that's the place I'm coming from now, then you're coming from yours. We're never going to reach a point of understanding. We're just going to go back and forth, because it's like, whose loop is bigger and badder, to kind of just keep going at it. But if we just stop and recognize that everyone is coming from their own internal process and it's not necessarily personal, right? And maybe stop and take a step back, because if I'm going to react to you in a certain way, then I have to understand what's showing up for me. And I have to take accountability and responsibility with myself to know that maybe I'm being overreactive. Maybe I'm being a jerk just because of what my morning, whatever it was, right, that contributed to where I'm at right now. And it's not your fault. You shouldn't have to internalize that, just like I shouldn't have to do yours. And if that pause, taking that pause, maybe just a sliver, a chance of some objectivity can, who knows what kind of difference that might make, and you have nothing to lose but try.
I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to add one little quick thing to what you said. Um, Not only looking at oneself, what's going on with oneself, but also looking at what is this mode
Mhm.
of reaction going to pan out? What is going
Mhm.
to come out? What's the result of it? How is this going to make the other person feel peaceful and loving and kind, or is this going to make them to react and fight? That would be a good also kind of step back and see what am I drawing out of the other person for
Mhm.
them to protect themselves and fight, or to be peaceful. What do I want at the end of it? Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Matthew.
My final words is a positive one, and it's no secret. I'm quite often uh, a bit skeptical about how technology is really helping us in the world. But I think one really good example that's recently come to mind is in sporting events, and a really good example of the good examples of the human condition is been in the World Cup of FIFA that's going on in America right now, and you really do see some really good examples of good sportsmanship, even people that it's sometimes they may clash and fight and there can be some problems, but for a lot of examples of really good sportsmanship, and not only between people on the field but also when losing sides and they help each other out. And I think we need to hang on to these examples as well, where we need to do more of that. And I'm really thankful that technology has allowed, if in the case of the World Cup, billions of people have been able to participate in a very positive human experience. And we need more of those experiences and less of wars and conflict and competition and everything else.
That's
So I
great.
think it's my way to end tonight.
Yeah. Well, good luck, everybody,
Yeah.
and everyone is a winner, right?
It
Yeah.
feels like it's before COVID. I love it. Oh, we've been missing that.
Ah, yes. Well, enjoy yourselves, and thank you, everybody, for listening, being with us, and covering these chapters. The book is called It's Not Easy to Be Human. I'll put a link in the description for you to acquire. Yay! With 60 lessons for life intelligence lessons where you can apply to your personal development, planetary well-being, and systemic changes that is pretty comprehensive. It should have been more than 3 or 4 books, but it's an offering, and hopefully it will be supported and benefited everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Let me stop.